Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramona, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve, Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve. I'm fired up today. Got an incredible guest. We spent 5-10 minutes talking, and audience, you're going to be blown away. And why? Because we dedicated this podcast to exploring the idea of purpose, servant's heart in your work and your life. I know it says Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. I just couldn't put life in there because it's too long, but business and life cross over bridges all the time. What kind of difference can you make? What kind of impact can you make when you have that purpose? We're also bringing guests that will show you how to be motivated, inspired, and educated with a servant's heart, with industry, with business, with life, and get you to maybe take that step, or even better, somebody in your network or family can take that step as well. Here's your homework today. Yes, I leave you guys homework. It's simple though. Think of how you can create service for yourself. So serve yourself and serve others today. And think about what kind of impact you create today. Write it down. Keep track of it. Because I guarantee you, if you don't wait and do it today, you'll feel great, because I get to do it every day. And I want to thank our incredible sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine joining a community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders who are building a thought leader platform to change the world and to grow your business. Link will be in the show notes, as well as reach out to me and I'll get you more information on that. My guest is going to talk climate, servant's heart, and faith. Yeah, crazy three things, but you know what? They are tied together in so many ways. So let's welcome to the show, Kevin. Kevin, welcome.
I tell you, Steve, thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast and to talk to your wonderful audience here. It is a pleasure to be here today.
I want to thank you first for your service, for joining the U.S. Army and serving our country. God bless you. Appreciate that. Can never say that enough. I know some people are, you hear it all the time. Again, it's never said enough. But you grew up in the Bronx. Now you're in Oregon. And now you're doing climate, and you wrote a book and things, which we'll get into. How'd that happen?
I was... Steve, thank you for the question. Great question. I'm a second generation American. I was raised by, my mother was born and raised in Panama. And she moved to the States as a teenager and became a naturalized citizen and got educated and became a registered nurse and was successful in her own right. But she raised me and my brother to really passionately love our country because of she had to experience what it was like to grow up somewhere else and then come to America and see what the opportunities that are present here. So she raised us passionate Christian, raised us with that servant heart, raised us, to model ourselves as men based on the example of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so I won't get too intense in that, but, that became the model, and that was her model over the course of her life. She's still alive, still with us. And so that's what started me on my journey. So this notion of being so grateful for all that we're given, that you then turn around and you give back just as vigorously. So I started my career with 4 years active duty in the military because I wanted to thank the country that gave me everything I had and gave my mother everything she had. And I loved it. I was a first generation M1 tanker. I served in NATO with Colin Powell, who was the Corps commander there before President Reagan swiped him up and made him Assistant National Security Advisor in the 80s. And it was a heady time to be in Europe. Peak of the Cold War and stuff like that. But I happened to be there when the balance of power between The East and West had shifted because we upgraded the technology with M1 Abrams and MT Bradleys, and so that was the start of my life of service. Then I went to college or what have you, and then I was passionate. I always wanted to be a banker. It's kind of interesting. So I took two professions or two expertise that have been so, well, they're not usually attributed to service. And that is, I became a banker, but I got my graduate degree in law. But I used these disciplines to serve, to customize financial services for entrepreneurs, people trying to achieve their dream, right? And I built a successful career doing it, and was successful myself, and until I hit a wall. I hit a wall in my servant's dream, in my servant's journey, because here I was in my early 40s, and I was, living in a big, beautiful house, had a wonderful family, had money in the bank, had all the toys, and I felt hollow. I felt like everything had just become transactional. It was just another deal. It was just another deposit in the bank account, that there was a greater purpose for me than that. And yet I felt like I had done everything that I was supposed to do as defined by our society and the norms of our society or whatever. And yet here I was, empty. And so it took me, I went into sort of a introspection, and I went back to my faith. I didn't leave my faith. I mean, I went back to the reconsideration, to get back to the roots, to try to figure out what is it for me that I need to feel fulfilled. In what capacity am I supposed to be serving? And so after 10 years of that discernment, that's when I started to write my book, Onward at Last, which was a series of social commentaries which endeavor to use our shared experiences to remind each of us of who we actually are. We are individual members of one human family created by one beautiful and amazing God. But so much about our virtues and values and narratives that define us as Americans have pulled us away from that in the worst way, in that we are now convinced that we are separate individuals. And what happens to Steve doesn't affect Kevin. We are convinced that we are pure competitors. And in the competition, one of us gets to win, one of us gets to lose. And that is the broader culture. And the problem is that has led us to the vitriol, to the divisiveness, to the winner take all of the society that we live in today. And so the purpose of my book is to have people take a breath and step back and take a sober look in the mirror and remember who God created, who you are, right? So that we can then first and foremost, stop contributing to the toxicity of the society that we know none of us thought we would grow up in, right? Because we are a participant in that, and then start living our true life. And that's how I got down to this path. I shifted my career because, in my opinion, one of the existential challenges facing us as a humanity is climate. It has been polarized, it has been politicized, but the data is factual, is global, and it has been validated by 190 the leading scientists of 195 nations in this world on the issue of climate, so that we have clarity in the audience, right? Russia, the United States, China, Israel, Saudi Arabia, all the European Union all agree that we have to dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, right? It's probably the only thing that they agree on.
Yeah.
But they do agree on this.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me to this journey, and hopefully that's an answer to your question.
Absolutely. What's your mom's name?
Andrea Scott. She lives right down the way. She's in Camas, Washington, and I live in Hood River, Oregon. So she's within an hour away. Wonderful woman. I mean, God's truest sign of love in my life.
And she's an angel because Andrea, shout out to you, because anybody that can inspire somebody by being in the country to go into the military. We know the challenges of the military. We know, I mean, would I go into it? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but you jumped in to follow your mom's inspiration. I wanted to shout out to her. That's powerful. So you're in climate, you're studying climate, you're seeing all this. What kind of impact do you think you can make?
Well, that became okay. So first and foremost, I was in a successful banking career. I was working for U.S. Bank, the fifth largest bank in the country. And so because I had an interest in other people in enterprise risk within the bank. So enterprise risk is when you look at the entire institution and what would challenge that entire institution. Credit is one of them, right? Well, climate was becoming an emerging risk. And so I happened to be in U.S. Bank in the enterprise risk group when commercial banking in the United States were starting to recognize climate risk as a level 1 risk that needed to be incorporated into the risk management framework of the bank. And the regulators, that whether it's the OCC or the Securities Exchange Commission or the FDIC, your insurance Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, all of them, including the Federal Reserve, were starting to look at this in terms of assessing the safety and the soundness of these massive institutions. So I became U.S. Bank's first climate risk qualitative lead. And so the impact I had in terms of that institution is I had the pleasure of leading the effort of writing their climate risk management framework, of participating in the development of their climate risk appetite statement. Because climate is not an economic problem. It is derived from science. It's an ecological problem. It's not, it's an externality to the economy, so that we didn't have a normal mechanism for bankers to assess climate and how it could impact performance. So you had to go back to school, and I was able to get the gold standard in climate certification is the sustainability and climate risk certification done by the Global Association of Risk Professionals. And so I went and, you go in the basement for as long as you need, and then you come out and you take this test, and half the people, some of the smartest people, don't pass it the first time and stuff like that. But I was able to successfully get my certification, and that is what that certification validated my knowledge so that we can start restructuring how this bank with $650 billion in credit exposure should manage the risk to that exposure. And so that's started, of how I tried to contribute. Then I went on to Freddie Mac. They hired me because they also, as a GSE, $3 trillion in residential mortgages that they hold. They are also, them and Fannie Mae are also starting to recognize, because housing is 15% of the United States greenhouse gas emissions. So they have to get actively involved, and they're going to be exposed. They have so much exposure to California and Florida and the Gulf Coast and everything else. So I was the climate risk analytics manager for Freddie Mac for a short period of time, where we were setting up the process by which they were going to develop their climate risk management framework and develop their risk appetite statement so that they can develop target setting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for U.S. housing. And left there, and that's when I launched my own consulting business, Changes Everything LLC, here in Oregon. And I work with local communities, counties, and financial institutions to help them recognize how do you manage climate risk.
You chose so many hard industries, from military, legal, banking, financial, and now climate. It's amazing what you're doing, because those aren't easy. One, to study, but two, like you said, to bring a servant's heart in the legal field or the banking field, it needs help, to be honest. Lawyers need it, and same with healthcare, which you're not part of. Those are places that servant's heart can really make an impact. With all that, you've written a book. I can't imagine what this book's about, but tell us about the book, the title, and where we can get it.
Sure. The name of the book is Onward at Last. And the reason why it's interesting, if you open the book, you will see it in the credits that I have a simple statement, because this book really represents the culmination of my faith journey, and so in the simple statement, the I say, to joyful, you inspired me to write, and so I have. Now, just so that you know, and this is revealing my open heart, joyful is how I refer to our Lord, and we can get into why that is. That might be a podcast by itself. But this is, you know, in having a personal relationship with our Lord, you can be invited to provide an endearment. I would have never considered that, but through prayer, the Lord said, "What would you call me that reflects your heart?" And I said, "Joyful." And so this book, Onward at Last, was inspired by our Lord, in that there were certain gifts that I was given, there's certain gifts that each of us are given, right? And and all the Lord wants us to do is to contribute those gifts for the good of all of us, right? And so what this book of social commentaries does is it endeavors to say, what if the virtues, values, and narratives that we're told that define us as Americans, and I obviously love our country, but what if those virtues, values, and narratives, when you compare them against the wisdom of our lived experience, are not true? So let me give you an example. It is at the heart of being an American, this notion of independence, right? But the thing about is nothing in God's creation lives independently. Nothing, and so at the heart of the American dream is financial independence,
Yeah.
right? But the thing about it is Elon Musk, all that money only purchases what everyone else produces. And so it's no matter how much he spent on what we produce, if one of us didn't do it well, he gets food poisoning just like us. When he mashes his brakes, if they didn't do the right brake job on his Tesla, it doesn't stop. In other words, he is just as interdependent on all of us, notwithstanding whatever is in his bank account. And so the point of the commentaries is to remind us of who we are, that we are individual, we are sovereign, we make choices, we contribute to our well-being, but we are intentionally interdependent on each other and the natural environment that sustains us. And the fact that we've forgotten that is what's brought us to this moment in time where people don't trust each other. You see a stranger and it's stranger danger. We don't trust the government. We don't trust experts. We don't trust people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and stuff like that. Yeah, that happens when you forget that the very person you hate actually serves you every day.
Yep.
Whatever
Yep.
your politics is, if you can't stand when you see the red hat, you're MAGA, right? But there are ranchers and farmers and truckers and the electrician who goes up in the tree to make sure you have heat in your house, right? And
Yeah.
and yet, because of this one difference, we reduce them to that, and now we don't care anything for them. So this book is supposed to remind us that no, this is not what we were created to be. This is not who we are, right? And once people remember that, they can change how they see each other. They can change how they do business. They can change how they serve each other. Because that's not what we're doing now. We're not serving each other. We're serving ourselves.
Yep. And that's, like I said in my monologue, you need to serve yourself first. You need to love yourself first to be a good servant.
Yes, that's
But
right.
you got to take that and share it. I like interdependence. The Elon Musk example is absolutely true. He eats a ribeye. Me and you eat a ribeye. We both had to get it from somewhere. Maybe it's different farms, but he's driving on the roads that other people are driving on. Maybe he's not driving, but whoever's driving. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
That really makes sense that we break it down to where we need each other. Now, I've had a lot of veterans on my show. Again, thank you for your service. And what I love, and I wanted to ask you, is what did you learn in the military that you're using today?
Oh, yeah. That I think my greatest competitive advantage in my career was my 4 years of military service, because it 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 really showed the superpower of being present and being intentional and actually doing what you set out to do. In other words, in a military context, if you are distracted because you're thinking about something else, and therefore your execution is not what it needs to be, more than likely someone is going to die, or someone is going to get hurt, or something awful is going to happen. So therefore it forces you to literally be present, to be intentional, to be 100% in what you do, and to do that as a discipline. As what they say, 10,000 hours or whatever. Well, that's what
You
that
hit
4 years of military service, it was the discipline of, no, you can't get it wrong once. That's the discipline. Right? And so, no, it doesn't make you perfect, but it makes you empty your tank in this now moment, so that if it doesn't work out, it's not because of how you showed up, it's not because of how you prepared, it's not because of how you executed. It is the fact that it takes everyone showing up to build success, but it's incumbent on you to show up. And so I show up for the rest of my life. That has been the discipline I've gotten. I would recommend, but for the violence associated with the military, that ethic of putting yourself in a moment and committing yourself to give fully to whatever you're doing, right? There's no better lesson I can imagine from military service.
Kevin, being present is missing so much in this world. So you just say that we can learn from it. I don't need to go until military. I'm 6:30. They probably wouldn't have me anyways. But that's what I love about interdependency. I'm going to bring that back. Now I can depend from you going, okay, presence. Okay, he was present in 4 years of military. Why can't I be present today, Tuesday, March 11th? Love that. Oh, this is the interdependency thing. Write that down, audience. We're interdependent. It keeps you away from judging, which we don't want to do. The Bible tells us, don't judge, just support and serve. We're coming to the end here. I've got a fun question for you. I'm excited to ask you this question. I want to learn a little bit more about you. So I've got a reservation at a restaurant in Hood River where you live, and there's 4 seats. You're going to sit in obviously one of the seats. The 3 empty seats, who would you invite, whether they're dead or alive, and what food would you order?
Oh, wow. That I have never been asked that question, Steve. So that's great. So 3 people, it could be any 3 people who I would invite. Oh, I tell you, it's interesting. Of the living, the first person that came to my mind is a developmental economist named Jeffrey Sachs. And he is I think he's the most important developmental economist in our lifetime. He is who America sent to Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union to help them convert to free market capitalism from communism. And he is the principal contributor to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so check him out. So he would be one person. Another person for me, I would really want to, I would pick Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because I think part of the challenge that we face today in America is we've forgotten something that he understood very well as a deep Christian, which is that the manner by which you overcome injustice is that you appeal to the humanity in everyone, that you don't try to frame the injustice just from the perspective of whom you represent. So he didn't just represent people of color, right? Which is why he appealed so broadly to people. So
Yep.
so Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the third one, this is probably historical. I would say I I would like to have I would invite Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our FDR, our president, and the reason why I'd want to invite him is that he had a strategy for the post World War II period. And he started to demonstrate that strategy at the Yalta Conference in February of 1945, when he asked Stalin if the Red Army could join the America in the Pacific against the Japanese once Hitler surrendered in Europe. And Stalin agreed to do it and said it'd take him 3 months to get there. Okay. Problem is, Roosevelt then died in April of 1945. Germany surrendered in May of 1945. On August 1st, 3 months later, the Soviet Union declared war against Japan, and we're in the process of sending the Red Army. But on the 6th of August and on the 9th of August, we dropped the nuclear bombs against Japan. And so, and that changed the whole trajectory of the post-World War II period, post-World War II era. This is actually why we had the Cold War. But I think if Roosevelt didn't die, or I think that if his prior vice president had been vice president, we would have had a different scenario. It wasn't necessary for us to make the Soviet Union, for the Soviet Union and the United States to become enemies, because anyone check the history books, the greatest ally America had ever had in war was the Soviet Union in World War II, because they lost over 20 million to Nazi Germany, and were fighting against 200 divisions while we were fighting against 20 divisions with the British. So they are a great ally, but somehow they became an enemy. And that's why I'd like to talk to FDR. And so what would we eat? Oh my God. We would, the best, okay, so the best, we would eat. This is Oregon is an incredible farm to plate place. So we would definitely eat, hopefully there's no vegans at the table. We would eat the best, steak, filet mignon, with potatoes. It would be a very starchy, protein, with fabulous red wine, and of course for those, what have you. So it would be a classic American dinner, a fine cuisine. Yes.
Sounds wonderful. I've got a great table. Incredible show. I love your faith, how you've taken all your disciplines that you've been part of and made it to where you are today. And audience, take that and run with it. Look what you've done in the past. Don't dwell on it, but learn from it, like you have done so fabulously well. People listening are going, I got to talk to Kevin. How can they reach out and connect with you?
Absolutely. Okay. First and foremost, they can go to the website for my book is www.onwardatlast.com. Very simple. And my email address for my business, Climate Changes Everything LLC, is Kevin H, as in Howard, Kevin H at climatechangeseverything.net. Okay. And so between that email address and the book's website, all the, you can obtain the book, hardcover, paperback, audio book with the narrator, narrated by Carolyn Jania, wonderful actress out in LA. And the ebook is all the links are in the website. But if you want to see the commentaries and you don't want to buy the book, or you can't afford the book or whatever, you can access all the commentaries on the website for free on the blog tab, the Universal Oneness blog tab, right there on the website. That's how they get simple. To me.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I love it. Servant's Heart, make it easy to access all its free information. And here's your homework at the end: subscribe to the YouTube channel. Here's why. This is a gift. You might be listening to Kevin going, man, I've got friends who are dealing with the military. They need to hear Kevin. Let's just use that as an example. You share this link with them, this podcast link, and they listen and they get motivated to reach out to Kevin. And Kevin gives them some tips, whatever it may be. You helped them on their journey. You gave them a gift of life. And I say life, not saying life or death, but impact in their life. Again, like I started the whole show with, make an impact. And it doesn't have to be my podcast. Any podcast you love and you're listening to it, I do it all the time. I just did it this morning with a podcast I listened to and share it with a friend of mine. And they were so excited to get it because it taught them something and motivated them. So let's use it as a gift. When you subscribe, you get all the links sent to you. So it's very easy. With that being said, me and Kevin want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.